All right. So this week we have Heidi Gerken. Heidi, we're excited to talk with you on this. So we're going to talk about security operations centers today, which you have a lot of background in. Can you share some of your background with the security operations center?
Sure. So, weirdly enough, I did not start out in computers. I actually am an art major from college.
I
Found
don't
out
think I
that
knew
was
that. What kind of art?
actually etchings and lithography. Wanted to be a graphic designer. So,
Okay, awesome.
anyway,
Very cool.
I wasn't very good at it. Hence, I'm in technology. I was better at fixing our systems than actually using them to create graphics. So it was kind of an easy progression into it. But I did some programming classes and then got some jobs doing some web development, fell in love with that, ended up at the SOC at the FAA through some weird machinations and was taking care of their Unicenter, helping with Unicenter, CA's Unicenter, so like a NOC operations type tool. Had a lot of experience with databases and things like that. And they decided they needed a SIEM. So I got put on the team for looking at different types of SIEM vendors out there. And showing my age, way back then, the big things were net forensics, some logarithm, and then ArcSight. So we ended up bringing ArcSight in, and I got to see firsthand how a SOC was basically brought on board with a SIM tool, which was very cool. And from there, I just became an ArcSight SME and ended up working for ArcSight, HPE, everybody that bought ArcSight, and ended up in SOCs all over the world. So Nestle's SOC in Barcelona. I did a bunch of DoD SOCs. I also did PNC Bank. So I've kind of seen a lot of SOCs over the years and how things have been done. The things I thought were really cool, the things I thought, were a little bit not as effective, perhaps is a good way to put it. And before coming to Elastic, one of my last SOCs that I worked at was actually at the DOJ, so the JSOC. Very cool. And just got a lot of really good experience because I was on the floor on a lot of those SOCs. So I got to hear from the analyst. I got to hear from the IR teams, which made me very fortunate in that I got to see kind of the full picture of what the life cycle in a SOC is all about.
I mean, there's so many things we can talk about on that. So in general, let's talk about what our goal is. So the goal of this, and we'll see how we're going to do this in maybe multiple pieces, but at least one piece. And the goal is we know that SOCs are transitioning and they are moving towards the new. And we like to think that Elastic is part of that new, and talking through what that means, what would be required to do that, elements like that. Am I missing something?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I want to dive into a few of those things, and it may not seem like we're getting anywhere, but I think here it is. Because you brought up.
Well, there you go. That's life.
Yeah, so Network Operations Center. And I feel like my journey towards cyber kind of hit that too. The Network Operations Center, at least for me, was where the Security Operations Center started evolved from to some degree. I mean, you kind of alluded to that. And I'm bringing this up because we're still progressing. We're still trying to figure out how to do this logically, right? So talk to me about that. Like, have you seen Network Operations Centers transitioning to Security Operations Center? Did you see that specifically, or is that a misnomer?
To me, it looked more like you had your NOCs in the day, right? And there was all of a sudden we need to be secure. So whereas the NOC was in charge of securing those systems and looking to make sure they were up, they built this whole other team. And I think at some point, for me, I think if they had stayed tighter coupled together, it would have been a better security story, which I think we may be moving back towards nowadays. But at the time, it always seemed like in a couple of the SOCs, we'd see something on the security side, and trying to track that down meant you have to get in charge of the NOC folks.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
figure out who owns that endpoint, who owns that server, where is it? We actually, one of the SOCs I was at one time, it was fascinating. We were onboarding a bunch of data, and there was a very old OS that was running. It was really in bad shape. We knew this was a problem, could not find it. Everybody was looking for it. The network folks had no idea. The admins had no idea. It turns out it was a server that got left in a closet that was built around it, but it remained plugged in and on the network. It's like, what purpose does this serve? Other than it's great, but it's setting off flags. And I think to that point of the two being separate is when they're separate, it's harder. It takes longer to track things like that down. It's harder to track things like that down. And you have an us against them mentality, right? The minute you see something on the networks, people start screaming, oh, it's the networks team. It's slow. Their network is crap. And the network team's like, no, it's not. It's the security team. They've locked things down. That's crap. When it could be just, a piece of code that was written that's trying to attach to a database, that database is having some latency issues, whether that is a network connection itself or whether it was the way that code was written. And I think they all need to be part of the same conversation. I'm hoping that in time, we'll all evolve back into one ginormous team so that you don't have to go talk to totally different people, right? And to the point of Elastic and other SIEM tools, we want to bring in all the data. The very first discussion at any customer is, what are we going to leave on the floor, right? And that's the biggest problem of all, because network doesn't want to leave certain things on the floor. Security certainly doesn't want to leave some things on the floor, but you have to make that decision. And I think we're getting to that tipping point where people say, oh, we really do you need to figure out, all you vendors need to figure out, how are we going to be able to get all of that data so we can have a full picture? Because I know when I was in one of the SOCs, they could only afford to get the denies from a firewall. That really doesn't help you. It's been denied. It doesn't matter. It's the accepts you want. You want to know who got in. You want to know who was denied 18 times and then got one accept, right? That's the picture you need. That's the picture many people aren't getting. They're missing that one key element, or 10 key elements, really. So I think we are getting to the stage of people not wanting to make that determination of, I don't need that data. And granted, there is data that isn't needed, but it should not be because we don't have the room for it. It should be because we don't honestly need it. We've brought it in, we've looked at it. It will never have any impact on whether it's network, security, user, host, any of that.
What would you say most common data that has to be dropped that you think there is value to? I mean, especially as we start moving into the AI world, where it doesn't have to be a human who assesses the data. It could be a machine who's actually assessing that data. Like, well, first of all, talk to me why Elastic can do this. Talk to me about that. And then walk through what some of those data sets are.
Yeah. So as I said before, for us, it was you could only bring in the denies from firewalls. And the reason behind that was it was a relational database on the back end of that product. And a relational database is great, but when you're starting to talk terabytes, petabytes of data, it becomes almost unwieldy to do that unless you have, so much money and capital to sink into the hardware for that. Most companies, most of the government doesn't have that kind of money. They need to be able to run on commodity hardware. They need to be able to stand things up, spin them up, and spin them down as they don't need them. So now we're getting into that conversation of maybe containerizing things. And where I think Elastic is starting to shine is the fact that people don't want to drop data. So our tiering system makes it much easier for them to buy that commodity hardware, put as much space on each of those nodes as you need. To one of your earlier podcasts with Michael Young, data has density. So determine your level of how much latency can I take in a query returning. Is it just milliseconds? Well, then you're going to have smaller amounts of data on each of those nodes. But we allow for that within Elastic. And I think the biggest gain for us, that is the biggest gain by far for any customer, is our frozen, which isn't frozen. It is searchable. So they can stack tons of data in object store, petabytes and petabytes and petabytes worth of data, and still search it. So it's able to be looked at. You can retrieve that data. There's no more of this, oh, wait, I have to go find that data. Where did I store it? Let's rehydrate it, which usually means you have to build another system because your current system is overloaded and you can't add any more data to it. So you're building a second system to do that work. And then you have to look at that data and then hand correlate almost with the data in your, say, production system. Whereas Elastic allows you to do that. Let's build multiple clusters. So each group has their own. Let's have this frozen storage, which shouldn't even be called frozen probably. It's just your searchable long-term storage. Be able to keep all of that data and keep it actionable. And if something is not if it's not acted on within the first, say, day, dump it into that storage that's cheaper for you. So you still have it. So you can run reports, do dashboards, do that investigation work that your IR team or your level 3 analysts are going to have to do when you do find something in that daily data. And so a product like Elastic, and that was one of the big reasons I came here, is I thought, gee, mini Christmas, this is what I was hoping the SIEM tool would be. Something that you could actually use at every level of that operation, from that first level analyst who gets things served up to them, like when alerts come in, and we talked about this prior. One of the least touted, and I think one of the most useful thing in Elastic, is our event rendered view. All that means is that alert fired, that analyst doesn't have to figure out what in the world was that person thinking when they wrote this rule. It'll write it out and tell them, this user on this box ran this process kicked off this process opened this file actually made network connections. It's given to them so that they don't waste time walking around going, hey, can somebody read my, SourceFire packet, that I have in the alert that I have no idea what it means. That just slows down that process and makes it harder for them to deal with. And again, to your point of AI coming into this, that speeds it up even more, because the AI is able to look at it as a holistic picture. So we can look at all of those alerts that fired, and where an analyst would have to go through each alert at a time, or maybe say, okay, show me all the ones that's associated with this user. But if they wanted to pivot to hosts, they could do that. But again, it's taking time. And that's where AI comes in and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to look at all these for you. I'm going to turn it around and hand you back and say, hey, this looks like APT 28. You can see, the progression of what they have done here, here, and here. Here are the alerts that triggered it. Now, if you want, roll it into a case with a click, or start doing your investigation so you're able to pivot, because you're always going to need that human, right? Because great, AI is great, but let's face it, it's math. It's looking at it, it's math. It doesn't know what we know about our environment. So I think I'm just kind of rambling here, but yeah, I think that's where Elastic fits in the big picture of being able to kind of modernize the SOC.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And the AI stuff, as you're bringing it up, it's so new. I'll never forget, it was not last April, so this is 2024, right? So it was not this April, but the April before, maybe March, our Gen AI was just becoming a thing at that point. It's that January, February, March timeframe. And our PM said, it's not a value to us. That was their first take back in like February. And then 2 months, it was only 2 months later, they completely pivoted the entire product because we have ML, right? We've been doing this AI stuff for a long time. They pivoted the product to make Kibana utilize, like, have a lot of like easy buttons with the AI. So we're only really about a year and 5 months into it. We're already seeing a lot of that. It's going to be interesting.
But we're not just a year, right? Because
Yeah,
you said
good
we
point.
had all of that. We were lucky. We had all of the groundwork, even though ML is a subset of AI. We actually had that already.
Embedded in our cluster. It wasn't like a side thing over here that we were playing like. It's literally
it
part of the
worked.
cluster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of rules already that existed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was easier for them when they said no first and then yes next. It was still easy for them to just pivot the whole product because they had the underpinnings already there. They had that foundation built. They were.
And you got to wonder what it like. I swear, every version that comes out, I am just in shock what we can do with it. Like the most recent one,
nuts.
Yeah, like where we are. What was the most? I can't remember. The two ago was when they're looking at the alerts, and you could say this is generally what people do with this alert in the past. So we're going to bundle all these up and say these ones you just throw away if you want, right? These are the key ones. And then what was
the integrations now? So now you put in some weird log and you just go, hey, here's my log. How does it fit into ECS? How do you parse it? And it goes, okay, let's help you with that. Yeah, I think that's amazing. It'll truly be amazing when it doesn't have to be in JSON format though, right? Even if I can throw a log at it, how much stuff is in syslog that just has to be parsed out before you even know what vendor it is from?
That's so true. I mean, just throwing it.
That's a subset of data that's just crazy.
We I mean, we have so many topics here. So
I know we're not focusing in on anything.
Yeah. So this is good though. Okay, so taking a step higher, let's finish that last topic. What so on the topic of infinite data, large quantities of data, bringing it in and the value of that for a cyber world, what are some data sets, if you were to pick top 3-ish data sets that we simply have to drop on the floor now? And we probably had to in the past because it was so hard to really get interesting data out of it because a human had to do a lot of, like, we could search it. The complex searches would have to be done manually. Whereas now with the AI, it can be done in a different mindset. What would be some of those data sets that you think might revolutionize the Security Operations Center because we can now bring it in and we can do a lot more rich evaluations of it?
I think a lot of it is if somebody says, hey, I've got this set of data, can you take it?
Okay.
I think that's huge because, yeah, we can take it. Let's look at it. If it proves of no value to anyone, then we can just get rid of it and not. But at least you have the ability to be able to bring it in and see how it will correlate against other data. Let's say a soldier in a field has an ATAC unit and they're sending information through it. What are we going to do with that? Well, I don't know, but the mission commander probably has a pretty good idea of what they can do. And at least we can give them a window into that data to correlate between those soldiers, to correlate between those battalions and all the movements that's happening, down to even logistics, right? If I have data coming in that's logistic data, where that battalion, where are the armaments, where is all that data? Can I visualize that? Can I figure out where they should be? Where are they actually now? Is a certain tact working correctly or not working correctly? That would be more of a looking at the data in hindsight, probably, but giving them that situational awareness is, and granted, that's not a SOC application at all. That's not even a NOC application. That is a boots on the ground application. And so I think that's what Elastic is really cool about, is that we don't care about the data. Just give us data. Let's look at it and see what we can do with it. And can we give it back to you in a format that makes your life easier, makes your job more efficient, makes you better at it? Because we're not taking the person out. You can't take the person out because we know too much about the situation, you know, our environment, our enterprise, our mission. AI just knows what we tell it, right? So there's always going to need to be a human pushing some dials.
When you think about that, this was a big element of why you see Elastic being the future in the SOC. How is that different than, we won't talk about products, but just the culture of the SOC 7 years ago? How was that different?
I think development was much slower, right? Big capabilities came over a longer period of time. The other thing was, it usually meant if you wanted a new major capability, it was a separate product that you would have to buy, cobble together. Being able to have a single product that runs in the background doing what all of those pieces of data we talked about, whether it's for the NOC, the SOC, the soldier on the ground, whether it's geospatial, whether it's an industry, manufacturing plant, what all of that data needs is to be searched and analyzed. I need to be able to ask a question and get an answer that is relevant to what is happening right now. And I think that's where we at Elastic shine, is that our engineers are just off the hook with thinking about what can we do with data that we bring in and how can we make it faster and better and give people the answer that they need. And I think that's a huge strength.
We're gonna have a future call on this. We're gonna close up on this topic because I have a few more things on this topic, but we have not touched a third of what I was thinking we were going to talk about. Yeah. First, well, we'll end with, I want you to think about, as we close, not yet, but as we close, like, I want you to think about what would be the handful of things that you see Elastic being the future of the SOC, and then we will dive into those in a future time. So not now, but I want you to finish with that one. So integrations, ability to bring integrations in. We talked about how AI now allows us to bring that data in from a JSON very easily, which we're only a handful of steps away from that being any log source. I think we can't promise anything, but I think that's a fair thing to think that we might be down that path. When, like, tell me if I'm wrong here, 7 years ago, people would know that there would be other data sets, but they wouldn't even try to bring it in because it was so much effort. Now we have that discussion, and there's a lot of data sets. Like, for instance, if someone's having an exercise somewhere, or they're doing some work, it would be nice to know this server, which usually is in the data center and is working in the data center, is now off in one location. That's why it's acting differently, right? Like, random data sets like that. I think there's huge value to that, right, Ben?
And that's where that machine learning comes in, right? This is not acting like the others. One of these things is not like the other. I always go back to Sesame Street. Yeah. So what is it a host? Is it a person? Yeah, that's acting differently. But yeah, I think that's huge. But the other thing is, we've also, people that have been in SOCs for years I'll give a Windows example. You get a handful of Windows event IDs that they want, your IA team wants brought in, because that's what they're looking for. And nowadays, looking for an individual event ID really doesn't make sense, right? Because looking for one simple thing does not a story make. Just because I fire a rule because somebody logged on 3 times incorrectly and didn't get on, why do we write rules that do that? We should be using machine learning, using something that makes our job easier. I don't want to look at a bunch of these where they logged on and then all of a sudden, they were unsuccessful, failed, and then they were successful. That's where it's important. So again, that's where the machine learning comes in, correlation comes in. So I think when I started in the SOC, it was very much one rule to tell you one thing. And I think nowadays, everybody wants that rule to tell you everything. I want to know what happened. So the attack discovery that we're now doing does that to some extent. It actually gives you the story. Why is this important? Why are these 4 events out of that 100 the most important? And why are these 6 the next most important? Nobody had to go through them. It was that back behind the scenes, AI working on that to serve that up to you. So you could spend time instead of, I believe the statistic was 8 to 10 minutes to work an event, a single event. So at the most, an analyst is working 6 events in an hour, maybe 7, right? That's not going to work when we're getting thousands of alerts because we're looking for a failed logon. Oh, a failed logon. Oh, no. We need to do it in a more holistic, broader picture so that we can see those behaviors that are happening as a picture itself, not just a small. You've seen those things where they give you a little image and they say, what is this? And you've got this little color or 2 colors in it, and you have to figure out what it is. And then they show you the picture, and you're like, nah, that's not, I thought it was an apple. It's a Coke bottle. You're not getting the full picture when you do that individual. And I think that's how much SIM tools have evolved. No SIM tool in the market today is going to be in it for very long if they are not actually correlating across events and following us and doing it as an attack, showing the entire progression and grouping those together and serving it up and saying, here, investigate this, save that, take that 10 minutes and make it count.
I think this is a good place to bring up Elastic Common Schema and how this helps the correlation. Can you walk through what the Elastic Common Schema is and how that affects everything we're talking about, which is this, I like to call it the attack spectrum, like the whole spectrum, what's going on through the old.
So we have ECS. I fully admit I worked with ArcSight, right? Prior, so that was Steph. It's a way of normalizing your data. And normalization is key in being able to match things up. Because if all of those logs look different, which they do, Juniper doesn't look anything like Cisco, doesn't look anything like Palo, nobody looks like Windows. Everybody looks a little different. So if you have a common way of speaking, so think of it as science. Sci-fi nerds can think of it as like that transmitter that they put in you so you can understand all the alien languages, or having Google Translate, being able to listen to somebody speaking a language you don't understand and you can read what it is. So Elastic Common Schema allows for that. It gives everybody, every bit of data, a common syntax with which you can correlate data across. I want to look at a firewall event, but I also want to look at an endpoint logon event, and I want to look at, some other process on, say, a Linux box, and be able to look at those all as a single picture. And ECS, or Elastic Common Schema, allows for that. So I think that's the strength. And that was known back in the day, right? Because ArcSight started with Ceph, and it wasn't as broad as ECS. I think ECS is, because it's extensible, you can bring in any type of data and get it into that ECS format so that you can do our earlier conversation. The soldier on the ground, if that's in a schema that's like that, I can correlate against, maybe the computer programs that are spitting out the logistics plans for the food, for the armaments, for, all of that are coming through. If I can correlate their data with that data, everything is going to flow much better because they're all talking kind of the same language. I cannot hear you. You have gone.
I had some internet issues. We'll see how the recording went there, but I think I could definitely piece that together. So closing out this specific topic, any other things you want to bring up specifically on bringing large sets of data in? And as well as one thing I wanted to bring up is I think there are some data sets that are massive, but don't bring a ton of value to them. And I think that is also part of this discussion as well, where if it's cheap to keep it, everyone would keep it.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's not cheap to keep it, you have to choose, right? Whereas now
like
you
PCAP and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, if you take the metadata from PCAP, and the other thing is we now have, what's it called? Gee, now I'm forgetting because it's so new. The logs, the aggregator, so that you aggregate those logs down, which allows you to keep 100 events as one event, 1,000 events as one event. If you can do that, then you're able to keep those larger ones. But you're right. There are massive data sets that you look at and go, no, I can't have this. But can you keep a subset of it somehow?
Data streams, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so any other things you want to bring up on this topic? And yeah, obviously there's a lot. BCAP is the common discussion there. Any other topics on this, as well as what other things that, as you look back on your SOC journey, that you're very bullish with Elastic for the future, that we will talk about later?
I just love the fact that it's so open and so quick to be able to pivot. And I think I was on a call earlier today with a customer and with one of the product managers. And they were actually talking about, hey, we don't see this in the product. This would be very helpful to our SOC. I think other SOCs would think it's very helpful too. And the things they were bringing up, that manager was listening to and actually saying, yes, we're actually working on that. This one is coming. This one makes perfect sense. We were trying to figure out a way to do it. Will you talk with our team and let's get this done correctly? And I think that for me is what I'm most impressed with because of the speed with which our developers work, with the guidance that they have from product management that is steered a lot by our customers. I think that's huge because it allows product. We weren't a SIEM tool. What was it, 5 years ago, maybe? They said, hey, people are using us for SIEM. We should actually make it so that they have the tool set within Elastic to be able to use it as a SIEM. And so within 5 years, it has checked a lot of the boxes that I wish were around when I was first going to SOCs and some of the problems that I saw. Like I said, having that first level analyst not understand why that rule fired or what the payload was for that, IDS. What is it telling me? Having to go around and do so much legwork to only be able to deal with one event in 10 minutes, if that. Sometimes it could be half an hour, right? If they're trying to track things down. So I'm most impressed and thrilled that our product is really helping and listening to our customers in the fact that here's what makes us a good SOC. If you guys could do this, that would save us time and make it more effective. And the opposite is also true. When PM says, we will never do that because that's not our direction. So we do some SOAR light things. We are never going to be a SOAR. So if you come to us and want us to be able to shut down firewalls, change rules, that's never going to happen in Elastic. But because we are so open, that API allows us to work with whatever product you choose to be able to do that and assist. But there are things we shouldn't try to be everybody's everything. And I think that's another good part that our PMs understand that. They focus in on what they think Elastic's strength should be, and they put their dollars and their development time there.
I absolutely love that as well. The PMs really listen very well. We do one of my favorite things within Elastic is when a customer, like a key customer, will say, "You guys are great, but we need these things," right? And we write that list down, and we carve it in stone, and we have weekly discussions about the progress of that list. It's impressive when we do that. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. Because it puts the customer in the driver's seat, which they should, because I have done some development, and if I don't use the product, what I think is cool may be of no use to the customer. And that's my big thing. If developers don't use the product the way our customers do, they'll never know this. So that product manager is a key link in saying, hey, my developers can do this, and they think this is a great thing, and have the customer go, no, that's totally useless to us. If you did this little thing right here, that would save us hours a day. And NPM goes, oh my gosh, well, we could do that easily. This is going to take forever. And if it's of no use to you, that makes it easy. We just change course. Being as agile as we are really does help build a tool that our customers can use to great effect, I think.
Totally. Heidi, this was fantastic. Appreciate it. We did not get close to talking about how to transition SOCs.
We did not.
That is going to be a future topic for sure. But
right. Sounds
thanks
good.
for your time. And yeah, until next time.
Thank you.